turning up to grace the speakeasy stage is he's great many things that we're going to talk about in a moment. He's a poet. He's also an actor and a producer of things. But I mean, he puts food on his table by being a poet, which is a pretty incredible thing. I think a lot of us in this room are trying to, you know, monetize our creative endeavors, of which he has a great story about doing that. And he is just quite amazing, I believe. This is beau.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Having me in this space. I actually love this space of many of the open mics in Los Angeles, though I never come here. So I love the poem that you did, and I felt like it had such a reflection of the narrative arc of violence in the world on a large scale, detail level. This is a poem regarding that violence on a conceptual level. It is called Unload.
Bang is the sound of neglect matured into rage. Bang deafens the ears of those unwilling to listen. Bang begs to ring the alarm that can't be snoozed. Bang, it begins before the aftermath of smoke. Bang, a boy who's only seen touch but never felt it. Bang, the daughter who's been hugged too long by abuse. Bang, babies burning in silence until innocence drowns in the ash. Then bang, just like the movies. Busy parents too hard-working to understand the explanation of special effects. Bang, you get it already? Because bang, there's been another shooting. And bang, the parent wants the metaphor. Bang, to get your attention. Because bang, there's no restart on this video game. The ones we call freaks ease our accountability. All media gets placed in a vacuum of blame. Our animal grows strong when fed on what distracts our humanity. Bang! This is not about gun politics. War is a convenient way to ignore the work. It takes a village to raise a monster. Bang! A billion uncharted moments before the darkness filled with stars. A billion unreported experiences before the child throws the fit that becomes the clip we stay fixed on, like children gazing at fireworks. Explosions made both message and meaning. Bang! Listen, for more than the loudest sound in the room. Bang! Weapons will evolve while we deny their origin. Weapons will melt once we reverse engineered our hate. Weapons will become archaic with choices more fitting to our unique design. Bang! Make time for others' hurt before it turns poison. Bang! Remember the child within before you react from the child within. Bang! Let your pain be a guide and not a source. Bang! Teach your children how fruitless the zero-sum game. Bang! Teach your sons their want demands context. Bang! Teach your daughters their will is not a prison. Bang! Compassion is greater than all that may destroy us. In every breath, an opportunity towards demise or thrive. It's not in the words. It lives in what's between.
Talk about everything, right?
Totally.
So in regards to your poem, you have a line. First of all, I'm glad we're recording this, which, by the way, you can see all archive conversations at ladybasco.com, but because I want to replay that, because there's so much in that I just wanted to like pause and think and pause and think, but then you're on to the next. It takes a village to raise a monster. It's a powerful line. What then is the opposite of that?
What is the opposite?
What is the medicine for that, I should say?
Oh, well, I would say the overall medicine for curtailing violence within us is to understand that we have much more powerful choices, and it is only through the failure of allowing those to rise to power through those weaknesses who have then taught us that is power, when it is not, in fact, power at all. Right, so as you find these children in early childhood development, these programmable, dynamic, organic machines can be anything. It is on us to feed them that right balance by which they move through life independently, choosing options that serve them the best. But in that, you must also teach them that what serves them the best must serve all the best, for it is a shared spaceship that we live on, one that we cannot reduplicate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well said.
I can't build an Earth, can you?
Well said. Okay. I want them, for those of you who don't know who Bosia is or whatever. Do you know who you are? Yes.
Oh, I mean,
yeah.
until I die, I have the opportunity to refine that for sure.
Of course.
You know.
I want you to talk a little bit. I know a bit of your history, and I know they don't. In terms of growing up and wanting to be a poet.
Oh, right on.
And
Right on.
what that looked like. Like literally, you set out to be a poet.
Yeah, when I was like 15. Yeah, I mean, typical story, right? Asian kid grows up in Oklahoma, feels like anything he says is not going to be listened to or received, freaks out, wants the world to think he's important, is tired of being invisible, has no one to talk to, so turns to writing. Turns to writing, feels that godly effect, takes that intense degree of self-importance and decides, I'm going to catapult into the world and show everyone that they were wrong about me, not realizing that this was an unhealthy way to use that energy, but as a byproduct developed a very intense skill set at a very young age because I sacrificed all personal relationships to become famous because I thought that becoming famous and important would cause people to see me and treat me well and love me. Not understanding at the time what it meant to love myself, so I have a very extensive resume. I've accomplished many things in my field, and then later on sort of walked away from all of that for a decade because it turned out that was neither fulfilling nor going to lead me to anything but hard drug addiction and or suicide. So then now, in the last 3 to 4 years, returning with my voice, understanding that it's not to receive the love of strangers, not to prove my father wrong, and not to shove things in the face of society, but rather to offer and share a sense of identity to hopefully inspire others that they have a place in this world and they must manifest it and own it, because that's the only true way that we'll have an understanding of who we are, is if every story is shared and everyone feels confident to share that story.
Excellent.
Something like that.
I love you, by the way. I love you.
Well, I'm here because the love is shared.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
So, on that, I just want to examine that part of the story where you created an area in an industry that wasn't necessarily materialized yet, the spoken word scene, as well as, and then if it was, that it was becoming, not necessarily for an Asian American, right, at that time. So, I mean, what did that all look like? How did that manifest? Because I think a lot of people in this room, unique in their own way, can't always fit in a box. So how do you create a career out of something when you don't fit in the box, when they're not looking for you? How do you create a career when the industry that you're in is not looking for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that there was a guidebook for that, because I could be on the Times bestseller list for a year. But I would say that, you know, definitely, what was it, 95 that I began? So none of the things that I'm known for even existed as a thought, meaning deaf poetry on Broadway, Declaration of Independence road trip, the National Poetry Slam scene outside of 5 major cities. All of that happened in the early 2000s. So how I found myself in that realm is everything was being developed by producers and creators and those who wanted to get in on this really quote-unquote cutting-edge thing was by virtue of timing, you know? Really, I mean, to be honest, for myself, I spent all the time in Oklahoma in isolation working on this thing that I was just driven by. And when I arrived in New York, it was the right timing by which that level of development was needed, because if they were going to sell spoken word outside of the quote-unquote urban audience, they had to have a diverse selection. I hit the timing on that one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in that one regard, they did need an Asian voice.
Well, they had my brother on the West Coast.
Right, but they needed an Asian voice that at the time for me was not so Asian. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your brother, not by his own doing, but by virtue of the roles he has and stuff, he was starting to be shifted into Asian, right? He's grown out of that through all of his choices since, but in the early thing, I just looked like an anomaly, right? I just looked like a bizarro factor, right? So you could claim he was Asian without having to address some of the things your brother was talking about, because some of the things I talk about now, I didn't back then, at all. You know, I was still caught up in pop culture Oklahoma, get people who don't look like me to accept me. Don't talk about my parents. Right.
Lastly.
It's gonna be on the internet.
Yeah, it is. Lastly, before you close us out with a piece, I just, do you have hope for the future of humanity? Is it looking good to you, or is it looking dark?
Right on. I would say 3 things on that. Number 1, every human being should be trying to figure out the things that they can do that work well in either a utopia or an apocalypse. Here's a great example. If you can stretch really good, that probably serves you well in both a utopia and an apocalypse. So think of things of that nature. Number 2, I would say that you are in a 50-50 world by which there is a huge number of the population that is being reduced to their animal brain for the sake of consumerism and control, and therefore is only going to be relegated to fear response. And if that group is allowed to grow to the rigidity of having no neural flexibility, that's who they'll be. But there's also another growing group who has access to technology, whether through wealth or means or whatever, who has access to all of this global reality that's becoming highly dynamic and very evolved beyond our even own understanding of what that means. So these 2 groups are rising much like the book The Time Machine. And the real question is it going to be the Morlocks or the Enoi that get it in the end, right? So it's a 50-50 on that. And the third thing I would say is this: anyone who believes the future is bleak and just resigns themselves to that, please realize the apocalypse is never going to be what you want it to be. It's going to be some fucked up thing where you are stuck in a cave for 30 years because you managed to live in it. You know what I mean? It's not one where you get to choose that you get wiped out, or you get to choose that you only get burned on 80% of your body, or you get to choose which of your loved ones die or not die, or we all go. It's gonna be some messed up thing if it ever goes on. So with that understanding, why would you ever resign yourself to that or do nothing to deter it?
Thank you, Bosia. We're going to close out with a piece and we'll continue the other night. He is one of the few people that I know in this world, in this universe, that actually I wanted to mention before, on and off stage, lives by the words that he says in his narrative. So I'm really honored to have you here, and thank you for coming, and please close us out. And we can
So this poem is from this book that I brought over here, and it's because I've learned that it's not only to glorify myself, but you can write poems to change or develop your own narrative. This poem I recite to myself whenever I feel like I want to give in to animal response. This is called Give Yourself Permission. Give yourself permission to pat yourself on the shoulder. Waiting on parents can take a lifetime. To take better care of yourself. Why feed those who profit on the broken? To listen for what isn't tangible. What eyes grasp is severely limited. To want from places other than fear. If others judge, that's their cross to languish on. You're not too sensitive. Feel. Let them hate on your tears and joy. You are not a robot. Give yourself permission to question the other boys. See the powerless in their socialized declarations about women. No one taught you what healthy relationships are. Give yourself permission to become self-taught. To turn down what doesn't resonate with core. You're not missing out. That party last week was just like all past escapes. Remember Einstein? Why expect differently? Meth is not for you. Truly. Trying everything once is an immature mantra. I see you. It is. Give yourself permission to sleep more. Success is not found rejecting the reality of rest. Give yourself permission to defend yourself in all ways, always. To do what does not originate from others' skewed sense of approval. To release yourself from expectations bondage. To be more example than showmanship. To listen to your own advice, beau. Give yourself permission to embrace who you are fully, reiterated in a world that still only rewards the pieces. To love more, double serious with a Fabergé egg on top. To wander where nothing is being sold. To walk away from this night only with what serves you. Thank you very much.
I need that. Come on up. Yeah, you're following Bosia.